Welcome to the Investing Mastermind Podcast. I'm Michelle Markey.
And I'm Signe Lundholt.
And today we wanted to give you an idea of what the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting is like, because it's coming up soon, this May 2023. And we're so excited to share that Signe and I will be going this year again.
Yay!
After the first time we attended last year in 2022, because there was a little bit of a pause due to, some world event that made everything shut down, womp womp, and we had to all watch the meeting from home. But then we got to go back, and it was so cool. And I mean, I say back as in, instead of just watching it on Zoom, we got to be there live, and it was super cool. And so Signe and I will recount what our first experience was like. And Signe, what was your first reaction when you got to go, or leading up to it? What were your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I was super excited because I had planned on going in 2020 and had to wait a long time to actually be able to attend the meeting. So it was definitely something on my bucket list that I needed to do. Yeah, the two of us, it was the first time we met at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, and we had met each other online. You had your YouTube channel, and I started posting content also about Warren Buffett style investing. We connected over social media and found out that we both were going to the event. So we met, and actually we ended up enjoying the whole festival, as it's called, together, and had an awesome time. So much fun. Fond memories, and I'm so excited to go again this year and create more memorable experiences.
Yeah, and I was so grateful to meet you in person too, because when we first talked on Instagram, it was cool, but then our friendship really blossomed when we met each other, and we realized how passionate we both are about Warren Buffett style investing. And it was just incredible getting to meet you, and how we got to then brainstorm about things that we could do together. And that's how this podcast was kind of born, from our friendship that we solidified at the meeting. So it's just super cool that we got to do that and, continue growing as investors and friends. So I was super grateful when we first got to meet. And then we, at the CHI arena where the Berkshire meeting is held, it used to have different names like CenturyLink and Quest, and then now it's CHI Health Arena, which is a little confusing because you think of like a health center, but it's not a health center, it's just a stadium. So with that, like, they had these electric bicycle depots that were sponsored by the Heartland B Cycle, and by borrowing those bikes, we were able to get around town with these fast electric bikes. And I know you also took them out. What were your thoughts about borrowing those Heartland B Cycle bikes?
Yeah, it was the best. So I'm from Denmark, and here we bike a lot. It's a very flat country, so we're used to biking everywhere. And biking around Omaha was so much easier and cheaper than renting an Uber. And being an investor, you rather want to spend your money investing in stocks than buying expensive Uber rides. So those bikes just made the whole difference. And I also actually believe that, we have so many good memories from riding the bike on the street of Omaha, trying to find our way and just exploring some of the hot spots in central Omaha.
Yeah, like when we got to see the Berkshire Hathaway headquarters, and I think it used to be called Kiewit. It is now called, I think, the Blackstone building. So we got to see the place where the magic sauce is made, where we can imagine Buffett is sitting in his office, just reading newspapers and putting ideas into the too hard box pile. And it was just so cool to be in the area where Berkshire Hathaway really got to thrive in Omaha. And then we biked around, and I biked also to Buffett's house, and it was just 5 minutes away from his office if you took a car. And it was so cool just to like explore and see all this. He lives in a modest kind of house in a little neighborhood that's nice. But,
Hmm.
considering he's a billionaire worth over $100 billion, this is pretty humble dwellings in a house that I think he only paid $31,500 for. And I want to say it was 1958. So back then, I mean, the fact that he still lives in that same house 60 years plus later is just amazing. And that people can just visit. And it's just so cool with other Buffett fangirls and fanboys taking pictures in front of his house and office building. And it's just such a cool place.
I also think it says a lot about Buffett, the neighborhood he lives in. It is really such a quiet, beautiful neighborhood. It's the kind of neighborhood you would want to live in. It's not, there's more upscale neighborhoods in Omaha. And this neighborhood, I have a feeling it's where the neighbors know each other and kids play out in the street. It is very, very green, nice and quiet. So it tells us a lot as investors that we need to put ourselves in an environment of a quiet and zen-like environment rather than a busy street like Wall Street in New York City, was something I reflected on about his house.
Yeah. And how
So
humble he is.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
if you want to be a successful investor, it's good to be humble.
Absolutely. Besides biking around the streets of Omaha, we also attended some of the events because there is the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting with Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. They answer all the questions. They quickly go through all the agenda of business. So there's that part on Saturday, but around the meeting, there's a lot of events. And one of the first events we attended was the Gabelli panel. And I really enjoyed that panel a lot. It was interesting. It's a fund, and they had invited some of the companies that they were invested in to discuss different topics. Adam Mead was there in a panel. He's going to be there this year again. I just saw that recently. He shared that on his social media channels. But yeah, it's really, really interesting to sit in the same room as some of these companies that the fund invested in, and they get to talk about the business. It was really, really some interesting topics that was brought up, and it made me want to investigate more.
Right. Yeah, and that Mario Gabelli, he seems to host that event every year, and it's publicly available to everybody. And that was a pretty cool event to be part of. And it was in the baseball stadium there. I think it was called the TD Ameritrade Stadium. So that's hosted there. And there's also a Creighton University panel, which I didn't get to go to, but I know that was happening around a similar time. And that was
Yeah,
on the Friday before the Saturday meeting. And also on that Friday, you could go to the Berkshire Hathaway exhibit hall where you can buy lots of stuff. So I actually recommend getting as much of your souvenirs on that Friday so you don't have to worry about trying to get them on Saturday where a lot of things could get sold out and you would take away your attention from listening to Buffett and Munger themselves. So it's ideal if you want to check out when the Bazaar of Bargains is open. I think it's only 12 to 5 p.m. on Friday. So that was also good to do ahead of
yeah.
time. And
There
also
was a lot of good swag
yeah,
from
exactly.
that.
And if you need to get your will call credentials, like I've gotten this question a lot on my YouTube video about how to attend the Berkshire meeting. You can get your, one share probably of Berkshire B unless you have lots of money and can afford Berkshire A shares. But technically, you could even probably buy the Berkshire B share the Friday before and then just whip out your phone app with your brokerage account and be like, here's my ownership of the Berkshire B share and here's my photo ID. And then you get up to 4 meeting credentials and it could be that easy. But if you go on the will call line, it could be maybe up to an hour wait, I've heard. So, try to do that early so that you can get into the arena and buy your swag if you are interested in that.
Yeah, and when we were, getting our lanyards and our credentials, we were outside the CHI Center and we saw Becky Quick on the street. And Becky is usually the person, she's a anchor, a host on TV, but she also does usually does the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting where she asks Warren Buffett questions from people that send in questions about Berkshire Hathaway, and she asks those questions directly to Warren Buffett. And the two fangirls, Michelle Markey and Signe ran over the street to get a selfie with Becky, and she was a fantastic person. Talked a little bit to her also.
Yeah, she was so gracious and like so kind. And it's kind of funny because I'm sort of neighbors with her in the area that I live in. So it's kind of funny to realize that, oh, we're from the same coast. How cool. Like the world is so small. So it was just such a fun thing to run into her.
Yeah,
And
and we talked to her about, being female investors, and there wasn't a whole lot of female investors out there. And at this meeting there wasn't a lot of females. It's very male dominated, like a lot of investing is. So we definitely encourage more women to come. We met a trio, Namita, Stefania, and Zoe. Shout out to you guys if you're listening in, which was really, really great. We met them at the Gabelli meeting and around town. Some other people that were super helpful, it was Troy Eller from the Blue Dot group, which is one of the groups around Berkshire that does some members only events, and just again really, really helpful in getting to know the whole event and everything that happens around it.
yeah, and there was also at the time a Guy Spear meet and greet and also a Whitney Tilson cocktail party. Those were both fun, but unfortunately they're not having those this year. But there are other fun events to be attended. Like there's also the Willow Oak Asset Management panel that's on the Saturday evening. And I also went to the Nebraska Furniture Mart picnic where for only $5 you could get this really big barbecue meal, and it was super awesome and delicious. And you can't go wrong if you want to check out both Nebraska Furniture Mart and get a pretty good affordable deal. So that was just a nice little something that Berkshire and Nebraska Furniture Mart puts on for the shareholders. So there's so many events that you could
Yeah.
join across, especially Friday and Saturday. So you won't run out of things to do, and you'll probably run into and make new friends who will then say, oh, let's go to here, or let's go check out Omaha Old Town, where you can see some old buildings where there's a lot of new restaurants and breweries. And
Beautiful.
it's so cool to just walk around and explore, and Omaha is pretty safe. So I think, a lot of people will just have a good time making new friends and just being part of the atmosphere. They'll learn a lot.
Yeah, and there's a lot of these public events, and then there's some events that are invite only and goes on behind the scenes. And of course, in the past year, Buffett had invite only events that, we can only dream of being invited to. At some point, I was really, really incredibly lucky to get invited to Guy Spears' party on Friday night that he had with some of his business contacts and family and friends. And it was a really, really beautiful, beautiful event. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of that. But as a new investor, there are plenty of events that you can attend. And one thing that Michelle and I experienced was that we quickly started hanging out with a group of people and just did a lot of fun stuff together, like going to the Bookworm store, which is a bookstore in Omaha. We went to Borsheim's jewelry store, which is also a Berkshire Hathaway owned company, or which is a Berkshire Hathaway owned company
And
that
they
sells
have
jewelry.
right, and they have an open bar when you go there during the
Yeah.
shareholder
Oh
only.
my goodness.
So so yeah, you can have some fun little boozy drinks while you're shopping for fancy watches or jewelry and other
Yeah.
knickknacks that they sell. So it's kind of cool to check that out as well. And on that Sunday too, there were some events earlier in the morning. Like you could have done the Invest in Yourself 5K, which I didn't do because I got in late on the Saturday night before. But for people who feel ambitious after a whole day of sitting on Saturday, you could get your 5K run in, and then also you could go to the Markel brunch that's hosted
Hmm.
at the Marriott, and that was happening last year and happening again this year. And it's super cool to learn from the executives at Markel, which is an insurance company that strives to be like Berkshire. So I think it's super great to attend that as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and I had this color-coded program in Excel. I'd done this, schedule with colors and everything. It was a panel at dinner or the brunch, or if it was public meeting or something by invite only, so that I could control my calendar. And there was so much to do. But what's really important is to not stress around and try to do it all, but also enjoy and do something that you didn't plan on doing, but in the spur of the moment, met some people you like to hang out with and then hung around and did something that you hadn't planned.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
exactly. Like what we did, we hadn't expected to play some board games, but there's this little cute game cafe called Spielbound in Omaha. And it was just so fun to, with our new set of investor friends, we played a board game together out of their hundreds, if not thousands of games available. So that was just lovely to do, just a
Yeah.
cute way to spend the time. And, we ate some of the famous foods from the Omaha area. You know how Omaha is known for steaks. So some of that was kind of fun to be part of as well. And yeah, I think people will have a great time if you enjoy meeting people and exploring. I think that you can't help but have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the day of the meeting, I got up in the middle of the night. I could not sleep. I was so excited. I think it was, and plus I was very jet lagged coming from Europe, so it was difficult falling asleep. So I went in to Omaha in the middle of the night to stand in line. And when I got there was already people in line waiting to get into the meeting. And I don't know if it was 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. I can't
Wow.
remember. Yeah.
God, you were online that early?
I was in line that early. I was so excited. I could not sleep. And I was like, okay, instead of lying here and just waiting, why don't you just go in there and stand in line? And the first person in line was actually the same person as every year. This year he had actually not been the first. There was other people that were there first, but to honor him, they let him come up and stand in the very front of the line. So it was so nice. Got to know some super nice people. I was in the international line, so there was a couple of guys from Britain, and we just had such a great time in line and discussing Warren Buffett's investing strategy and what we did. That line in front of the conference center ahead of the annual meeting is an event in itself, and
Mhm.
I really highly recommend that if you go, that you open up and start talking to the people that are next to you. You will learn so much from being there.
Yeah, and that reminds me of how last year we still had to show our COVID vaccination proof. And I think this year they've done away with that. Like everything is back to normal. So I have a secret feeling it might be even more competitive to get in this year than maybe last year because not all the
Yeah.
borders were open last year either. So
Hmm.
maybe some of us got a little bit lucky if we didn't show up online till closer to 7 a.m. But people are going to want to get online kind of early in the morning to be assured that they're going to get a good spot. Or also if you have friends that that can hold a seat for you. So it helps you in many ways to network and make friends with lots of people, to be able to look out for each other. And I know that I gave away some of my credential passes to some of my friends, so it's helpful to have some of those extra passes to just share with people if need be. And it's just a feel good event.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually one of those friends that you gave a pass, because if not, I would have had to stand in line for a very, very long time being international. So I
Mhm.
really appreciate that. So at the meeting, I had to pinch myself sitting in front of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. As I mentioned earlier, this was an event that was on my bucket list So to me, this was so big. And it started out with a video, and we weren't allowed to record it. It was super secret, but it was a video with lots of celebrities, lot of, fun little sketches. Warren Buffett, he likes fun and he likes a laugh. And this was definitely such a fun video that you only get to see if you're there in person. And I'm very excited what they are going to do this year, because they always start the event with something. So I'm expecting something this year as well.
Yeah, and just to tell people a little bit about that ultra secret Berkshire video, because you can't find a copy online, but it was hilarious in that some of it are like the greatest hits of, say, Geico commercials. So some of it might be combining some commercials that you actually might have seen, and also some new skits, like Sina was saying, of this time, because the Berkshire meeting in person got canceled for the years 2020 and 2021. Buffett decided to reenact some of Groundhog Day, the movie, where he was pretending to be like Bill Murray, and he would wake up and the clock seemed to like reset and he'd go to the arena. And then it was funny because Bill Murray was the bouncer who was turning away Buffett and be like, "You're not on the list." And he's like, "I'm Buffett." And he's like, "Jimmy Buffett." And he's like, and then he would be turned away and then he show up dressed like Jimmy Buffett, the singer. And then at first Bill Murray let him in and then the security realized he's not Jimmy Buffett. And then they went after him. And it was just kind of like hilarious how, it was like a funny Groundhog Day style Berkshire video. So it's just super cool. And even Bill Murray himself and other famous celebrities and CEOs were in the sort of VIP section, only in the bottom in front of the stage, where Buffett, Munger, Ajit Jain, and Greg Abel were speaking to everybody. So it's just super cool that that we got to see that video. And then after that was the famous question and answer for about 6 hours. It's the whole reason why people come to this meeting, is like the official business meeting at the end of the day, where they just reelect board members or talk about voting down certain measures that were never going to fly. Like those happen at the end of the day and then people start leaving. But the main reason why people come to the event is from that question and answer starting at around 9:15 until about 4 o'clock. And that's what you go there for, is to learn from Buffett and Munger.
Yeah. And that part of the meeting can actually be, you can go to YouTube and watch it. Usually, I don't know about this year, but usually you can watch on YouTube. You can see it live there.
Or on CNBC's website.
Yeah. So go and do that. You don't have to be there in person, though it is magnificent to be there.
I was so sleep deprived.
Yeah, me too. I must admit, don't tell Warren, but I did fall asleep. I had been up. So at some point I was like, whoa, whoops, up again.
And I needed to get some food in. I was like starving, like during lunch. I was like, oh, I need food. But then I guess I didn't find where some of the food options were. So I had for lunch a $2 Dairy Queen ice cream bar that probably had 1,000 calories. And I was like, oh, this is good enough. And it's probably a Buffett style lunch, because I could see Buffett having just an ice cream bar for lunch himself.
Well, I had some gentlemen sitting next to me, the British gentlemen, and they got me a hot dog from one of the stands. I was so hungry. So very, very grateful for that too. So they were great companions on this too. One of the things that really, stood out for me last year was when they talked about the index funds. One of the questions was about the 3 largest index funds and how they have extreme power over businesses, because they have a majority of shares in the businesses, and then they start making demands to the businesses. For example, a demand could be, well, you should pay out dividends because that's what our shareholders it's the ETF. It's like a Vanguard that, owns a large part of the S&P 500 businesses. And that's a problem, because the business should run the business, not the shareholders like that, through ETF, which are really passive investors. They're not active investors. They didn't buy the shares themselves. They bought an ETF, which is a pile of shares. I found that to be really insightful, and I liked that conversation. And I also really liked what Munger had to say about it.
And I mean, I think part of why that's such a contentious issue of the rise of index funds having so much power is because they accumulate all these shareholder votes, like all the passive investors who kind of allow these brokerage managers of the index funds to use their vote by proxy. So even though you're just a passive person, you're just owning the S&P 500 index fund, but some portion of that is attributed to Berkshire, but you don't get to use that vote, even though it should be your right. And then, some of these famous big brokerages, they can use that by proxy and then try to pass, certain measures. Like they might want to have Buffett step down from being the CEO or make Buffett do other things. And then fortunately, the Berkshire board rejects those measures. But sometimes it's a little bit too powerful that even though the vote shouldn't belong to these brokerages, they get to leverage people's voice. And I feel like that should change. I feel like people should be allowed to vote themselves, and the power shouldn't just automatically go to these big brokerages that kind of like are the
Hmm.
all powerful brokerages. So,
I
maybe that
100%
would be,
agree. Yeah.
something that hopefully people realize could be a problem, which is, not in maybe all shareholders' best interest. It could be in some of their best interest, but maybe not everybody. So I think for as long as we continue to have a democracy in the US, people should use their voice. They have the right, to vote. You should use it if you have it.
I totally agree, and I agree on your point of view, and thank you also for explaining this in a better way than I was able to. We're coming to an end of the show. We actually talked a lot today, so I hope you all enjoyed us talking about the Berkshire annual meeting. If you have any questions, you can always contact us on Investing Mastermind Podcast at gmail.com.
Or also hit us up on our Instagram. You can find us either on our podcast account or our individual accounts. And,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to learn more, you can check out some of my YouTube videos about what the experience was like and the places I went at the time. And, Signe and I will be there again. So if you see us, don't be shy to say hi. Like everybody, including us, is really friendly at the meeting. So we'd love to get to talk with you if you're there. And if you listen to our show, we'd love to hear your feedback. And it will just be a great time. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you there.
Yeah, feel free to come up and say hi if you see any of us. And I'll also be blogging about the event and sharing on my social media channels live what is going on. So you find me at Investionista.
All right. With that, till next time.
Bye bye. If you enjoyed the show and found the content informational, we would be super grateful if you would leave us a review and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you automatically get new episodes in your feed. We publish a new show every Tuesday.
The contents of the Investing Mastermind podcast are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. None of this is investing advice, and if you need help in your personal situation, please consult with a professional.